we do the things that we think are good and right. I certainly didn't take the seed of an idea of Commander and plant it and water it and grow it, thinking, this is where I'm going to make my mark on the world. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing I was doing. Commander has always been a social format first. There are people that have been shut out of the conversation or discouraged from the conversation, and we don't want that to happen. I really want things to be open, and you can actually find us on the Discord server. I know one of the criticisms of years gone by was that the RC was this sort of ivory tower group that never talked to anybody. I actively spend time on the Discord server. Come talk to me. Just come talk to me. And if I can do anything to remove roadblocks for anybody to sort of maximizing their Commander experience, I'm going to give it a whirl. There are times when darkness can come on you, and you think pretty morbid thoughts, especially when you're in pain or feeling bad. What if this is as good as it gets? Those are the times you really have to count on your support network. I have an amazing partner, a great group of local friends, and a worldwide community that's rooting for me.
Sheldon Menery, how are you doing today, sir?
I am amazing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a while, and apologies for not following up earlier. I know this is kind of like the nitty-gritty of logistic stuff, but it's been a pretty, to put it succinctly, pretty hectic couple of months on my end, and I don't know, how are things going with you, General? I mean, you said good, but hopefully, you know, it's been good overall. Yeah,
they're pretty good. You know, my health is on the upswing. I'm getting back to doing events. I just got back from SCG Con Indianapolis, ready to head off to Magic Con Philadelphia. So it's magic all the time, man.
Yeah, I mean, as a convention and Magic veteran by now, just super distinguished veteran, like, what is that? How does it feel now, like going to an event? Is it just a blur? Are you like Mark Rosewater? It's like you're hitting like the 2000s location in X years. Like, how does it feel?
Well, it's always fun to me to find, even in cities that I've been to before, things and people that are new. Like, I might go to Harry and Izzy's in Indianapolis every time I go, but I'm probably going to go with somebody that I haven't been with before. So there's always a newness to it. I refuse to let myself get jaded by the convention experience. My first big con was Gen Con 93. So it's, and I was certainly going 100% chance of cat crimes, by the way, here on
no problem. I got a couple on my side too, so I'll they might come up in the background. Yeah.
So I've been going to cons for a long time, and I certainly went to smaller conventions for a number of years before that. I don't know. I don't know at this point at my age and sort of experience level that I'm ready to just go as a normal convention goer anymore. There is something nice about having a little bit of privilege, and being able to go to the dealer's hall at Gen Con an hour before everybody, before they let the big crowd in or whatever. But I don't want to get too like been there, done that about cons, because they're still exciting. There's something to do. There's always something to do, and when we play a game as alive as Magic, there's always a new experience to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And from 93 Gen Con to now, have conventions changed a lot? Because I haven't gone to conventions back then. I'm wondering if it's like, for you, is it just obviously your role has shifted, as you said. Maybe you're more of a guest of honor with perks as opposed to Joe Blow, right? But do you feel like the convention itself has actually evolved over the decades? Or is it pretty
absolutely.
much like...
I mean, when we went in 1993, Gen Con was still in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And there's actually a story there. So at that time, I had been involved with the RPGA for a few years, running D&D games at conventions and stuff. And it was back then like today, like you had to make your Gen Con plans early if you wanted to get a decent hotel room. And I decided I didn't really, hadn't made plans to go. I mean, I was in the military and planning leave was a thing. And in May or something, Gene Raby, the head of the RPGA, was like, come to Gen Con and run games for us. And I'm like, Gene, you got to get your reservations in January. It's like, don't worry about it. I'll get you a place. Like, okay. So she manages, comes back to me and says, got you a place. It's not right by the convention center. It's about a mile up the road, but it's a straight shot down the road. No problems. I'm like, okay. And I went with, we drove from, I was at the Pentagon, and we drove from Washington, D.C. to Milwaukee, so it's a 2-day drive. And it was me, my ex-wife, and another couple, two friends of mine, Tom and Jay. And we get to Milwaukee and find there's the Mecca, that's where we're going to be, and find the hotel. And it's a hotel where people stay by the week kind of thing. Not, one of those city hotels that you see on the TV shows where there's always, that guy that hangs out in the lobby and, there are a few people that are down on their luck, ranging around. I'm like, okay, that's what it is, right? It's not that expensive. We're okay. Get up into the room and it's a suite. It's like 2 master bedrooms and a kitchen and everything. It's more like an apartment than a hotel room. Like, okay, this is fine. So we stay there, have a good con, blah, blah, blah. We find out, I think in the 3rd or 4th day that we're at the convention, we tell somebody where we're staying, and they're like, one of the locals. And like, did you say whatever the name of the place is? I'm like, yeah. Well, that's where Jeffrey Dahmer claimed his first victim.
Historic landmark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did a little investigation. We were actually staying in the room.
In the actual room. Not just the hotel, but in the actual room. Where the things happened. Oh,
yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't open the freezer.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, I mean, cons were, even Gen Con, even a 25,000 person convention, which is what I think it was back then, seemed a little quaint. In retrospect, to the wide-eyed convention going me in 1993, of course, this was a grand experience. I didn't. Gen Con back then was organized in 4-hour blocks. So there was, block 1 through 13 or whatever, for the weekend, and, or 16. And I was running games in 13 of the 16 slots.
Holy smokes! You mean you personally were there? Like,
yeah, I was there. I was there.
Like
I was there to
the
run
station.
indie games, so I did. And I only had one. I only had one slot where the dealer's hall was open that I wasn't working.
Yeah.
And that happened to be the slot. I was walking through the dealer's room, and there was I saw the booth of this company called Wizards of the Coast, and I knew them as a role-playing game company. They recently come out with a sort of system agnostic supplement that was really, was well written, well received, and whatnot. I was like, oh, that's Wizards of the Coast. Let's go see what the fuss
So
is.
you mean like it was something that worked with like D&D GURPS, like it worked with different
it was,
engines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, across all systems. I think there were no mechanics in the supplement. It was all just narrative stuff.
So like when you saw that booth or when you saw Magic, like what was the first who was the first employee that was there from Wizards side? Like did you interact with anybody? Like okay,
I don't remember anybody.
It was just the product itself that you remember, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, again, there were people playing, and I'm sure Peter was there, and there
Peter
were
Atkinson,
playing.
right?
There was like this real excitement about the game, and I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. It's fantasy adjacent. It's cards. And, it looks like a game. And I grabbed a starter and a booster, and walk away from the table. I'm like, oh, well, we'll check this out as we go through our pile of goodies that we get from the con later on. Yeah. And I remember walking away from the table, opening the booster pack. Like, okay, well, the starter deck was, had the shrink wrap and everything. And
a little bit more work. Yeah.
I'm not going to mess with that. Let me just open this booster pack. And the first Magic card I think I looked at was Time Walk.
Ah, okay. So this had to be beta, I assume?
The alpha.
Okay.
This was the con that Magic was released. This
was alpha. Okay, this was like the super short alpha.
This was the first time that the broader public had seen Magic.
Okay. Were you immediately hooked? Like, did you start to try to learn how to play? How did it work?
So my ex-wife and one of our friends tried to figure out how to play Magic in the car on the way back to DC.
Perfect.
Like we're riding back, and they're back there. They're back in the back, and it's like, okay, I don't understand. And it was probably a month from the time we got home to the first time I played, and I was hooked right away. Like Veteran Bodyguard probably is the card that. It's like Veteran Bodyguard. This is amazing. Yeah. And then we went through that moment of how can you lose once you get Prodigal Sorcerer out?
Right. It had a little bit of like maybe not fully understanding the rules and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah. So we dug in, and I started once I started playing, I'm like, this game is insanely good, and I was hooked right away. Left the country in early '94. Took it with me when I went to Europe, and I was in Belgium. Took it with me, played with some of the other Americans over there, got to know the
cards were printed in Belgium, by the way, right? It was Cardamundi?
They were Cardamundi, yeah. They were printed in Belgium at that
time. A little bit of
time.
Coincidence in that, yeah.
I got involved with running events, eventually became a judge, rest is history kind of thing.
Right. I do want to quickly ask, what made you decide to join the Air Force? I know this is like a little bit of a detour, but I wanted to ask you something that I was just insanely curious about that perhaps other people have not asked you. So, how did that happen for you?
I wanted to do something different. I was 20 years old. playing rock and roll and waiting tables like every, not yet successful musician does. And just it was 1983, it was late 1983, and I was like, I need a change. I don't think I was headed in a good direction in my life. There was a lot of excess because it was rock and roll. It was 1983. I popped into a recruiter's office on a whim. Like, really, like, there was no plan. I'm like, wonder what they could offer me. And I started talking to the recruiter, and he's like, well, if there'll be an audition and whatnot, we could put you in one of the bands. I'm like, that's not what I want to do, right? I don't want to do the same thing that I'm doing now, and I'm probably not going to get to do some of the same things that I'm doing anyway. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. 20. I'm certainly, I didn't say it, but I didn't have the self-awareness to say that, but I didn't know. So I'm like, I don't really know, but computers. He was like, okay, there's some tests that you can take, and we can get you in a computer career field with a guaranteed job. It's like, and I talked to some people like, don't go into the Air Force without a guaranteed job, because you'll end up as a security policeman. So like, okay. So I took the test, passed the test, went to school, learned computers. The career field quickly adapted from computers to computers and communications. So by the time I retired in 2004, things looked very different from 2 decades earlier. My first job was operating a mainframe computer, a Burroughs 3500 computer, which was the size of a Circuit City.
Oh, I was going to say size of a room, but even bigger than that.
Yeah. With disk drives that were washing machines and high impact printers and punch cards and paper tape and all that kind of stuff, to things being considerably more digital by the time I retired.
So you were a 20-year Air Force veteran.
Mm-hmm. And I did everything from operate a tactical communications van in the mud in Korea to doing computer security for Dick Cheney when he was Secretary of Defense.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there was an arc there.
There is definitely an arc, yes. Did you ever go back to playing music? Did you do it part-time while you were in the Air Force?
I did it part-time while I was in the service. Matter of fact, when I was in Korea, I had a pretty good band with some other Air Force members, and we played a couple of shows downtown at one of the big hotels. It's a 1-year remote assignment. You don't really have a lot of time to work together too much. But I had a band. My assignment before that was at Keflavik Naval Air Station in Iceland, which is a Navy base, and I had a band with some very good musicians, a mix of Air Force and Navy. A guy named Michael Jackson who played the drums and was insanely good. And then in Korea, in about 3 months, we got together a pretty tight act and played a couple of shows at the big spots in downtown Songkwon-si.
What was the style of music you guys played, and what instrument did you play?
Hard rock. Like we were covering Night Ranger, Styx, maybe a little of the hair metal that had started by then. Not too much, but yeah, Van Halen. We even did a couple of Rush tunes that I had. Like our drummer was not capable of. We were playing Rush songs. Our drummer was just not capable. We were rehearsing one day, and I started ad-libbing on the keyboards, and the structure of the song fell apart. And we all kind of look at the drummer and like, what happened? And he's like, I was following you.
When you have the circular following each other, yeah. That always ends up well. I mean, overall, what would you say, other than operating, mainframe computers, like what would you say are your kind of big takeaways from being in the Air Force? Like, what did it teach you, or what did it reveal to you?
What did it reveal to? Well, I mean, it certainly made me have a sense of discipline that I didn't have before, and probably don't have now. To be honest.
It's been a while since then, yeah.
Yeah. There is the structure to things, and it taught me about making plans to do things even if you do them regularly, like having a continuity book to do everything you do, which certainly some of my training and experience as an Air Force NCO ported over into the judge program. Like when I became a judge, there was a bunch of stuff I didn't need to learn because I already knew it. Right? There was a bunch of leadership things that were already part of my my skill set that I didn't really need to come into the program and learn. So I could just kind of jump right in at a relatively high level. But it was an opportunity. I went some very interesting places. The 6 years that I spent in Belgium were kind of, for the most part, outside the Air Force. I mean, I still wore a uniform. I still went to an Air Force job, but we were writing air defense software for the NATO countries, and we were. I mean, it was like going to an office every day. We literally couldn't go to work on the weekend. Yeah, right. The place was closed. Everything was designed more like a civilian work center than a military one.
I was going to say maybe more like civilian life.
Yeah, yeah. And we got all the European holidays instead of the American ones, which meant we got a lot more holidays.
Yes, that is a nice perk. So, what's something about Belgium that most people don't know about? Like, for example, I've never even been to Belgium, so like, what's cool about it? Belgium
has a great food culture. Mostly influenced by the French, their southern neighbor, but you can find like insanely good restaurants just out in the countryside. Like go to Random Dot Village, and the one restaurant in the village is something that today's Iron Chef wannabes would be very, very happy to put in front of you. It's kind of where I got really excited about food and wine. That was just like it was in the right part of my life, where I was surrounded by people who appreciated food and good booze, and we spent some time enjoying ourselves. And I got to eat in some very, very compelling restaurants and share it with some very, very compelling people. So Belgium, great sort of great gastronomically. Best beer in the world.
Belgian beer, yes.
Belgian beer. I miss I miss drinking the Abbey beer regularly.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to ask you about wine. So it sounds like you developed that love, or maybe refined that love in Belgium. And,
I did, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So are you still drinking wine from France or Belgium these days, or how's that working?
The Belgians don't make too much wine because they're a little too far north.
Okay.
We have about an 800 bottle wine cellar here at the house.
Holy smokes! Yeah.
So
okay.
we drink wine on the regular. I mean, my health treatments have meant that I've had to mostly slow down, but we still enjoy good bottles of good wine on the regular.
Sure. Yeah. Is that going to be a new show like Commander and Wine, or is that something that's always been in the works?
Pairing, always pairing. It's going to be me and Brian David Marshall are going to do a cooking and magic show.
Yeah. So he told me that you take him to the best fine dining spots in Florida when he visits, right?
I do.
So what are your go-to spots in Florida? Are you at liberty to say, or are they secret?
They're not secret at all. That's because I love my friend Brian, and I believe the best restaurant in Florida is in Tampa, and it's a place called Mise en Place, and it's I think they're celebrating their 33rd or 34th year in business now, maybe 35.
Okay.
And it's chef is obviously classically trained, and it's sort of a low country, new American take on classic cuisine. So there's just, there are regular things on the menu. He's got the same rack of lamb that he's been making since the 90s or whatever. But then there's always something new and different. And he shops locally. He likes to go fresh. Whatever he goes to the market for. He goes to the market and finds something in the morning. It's like, we're putting that on the menu for the next 2 weeks or whatever. He is the best that I've seen with duck. Like he has done more exciting things with duck than any chef I've ever been exposed to. At one point, he was doing ghost pepper duck wings on his bar menu, and one day we went in and they weren't on the menu anymore. I'm like, "Chef, what's up?" He's like, "You were the only person eating them." Like, okay.
Did you lobby him to get it back? Or?
No, there was always more than enough.
Yeah,
to eat there. And then locally here, in Tampa, there's another very exciting place called Edison Food Labs, and they're just chef who was a sous chef under Marty at Mise en Place. Now that I think about it, opened her own spot, and she's just one of those experimenters, and you never know what's going to be on that menu, and she just hits it out of the park every time. There are no misses on the menu at Edison. Locally here in Lakeland, so I live in Lakeland, which is halfway between Tampa and Orlando. So, I'm basically at the geographic center of Florida. Mm-hmm. In Lakeland, Lakeland is 120,000 people or something. It's not tiny. Mm-hmm. And we have a restaurant called 1961, which is named after the chef's father's entry to the United States from Cuba. That was the year he came here. Okay. Stuff was happening in Cuba in 1961.
Definitely was. Yeah.
And he basically is Neo-Latin, very heavily Peruvian, with some Asian influence, and he really knows what to do with his red meat. Like he's a beef and pork kind of guy. I mean, there are other things on the menu, but I'm forever diving right into.
That's the go-to for you. Yeah.
I mean, there was once that he had. There was like flank steak appetizer, flank steak main course, and I'm like, I'm all in for both.
Sounds like your city is no slouch either. Then, when it comes to
I think it's lagging behind other places of a similar size because we only had like one or two really good spots instead of 4 or 6. Like if I go Roanoke, Virginia, and Lakeland are about the same size population wise, and like I can go to an event at Star City and not have any repeats in a week of the places I want to go. Whereas here, I'm like, after we get outside 1 or 2, we're kind of going back.
Right. But there's advantages to being kind of like the midpoint between 2 major cities in Florida, because then it's kind of a nice place to be if you're into food and wine, because you can kind of go between the
both,
2. Yeah,
both are definitely in play. We're about half an hour from the gate at Disney, so Celebration and Downtown Disney, or whatever they're calling that now. And the sort of western edge of Orlando are close enough to go to restaurant-wise, and all of Tampa is in play for us. So we're frequently, my wife either works at home or is traveling. So frequently back in the before times, we would plan restaurant trips around her coming back from a business trip. Like, you land at 7:30. Well, conveniently, that's
dinner time.
The dinner hour.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to your, becoming a judge, right? And because I think you went all the way to level 5 judge. Is that what it was?
Correct.
Okay. When did that happen? Was it? I guess it must have been like in the 90s. You started judging.
I started judging in 1996. I certified as a judge at the first ever Grand Prix in Amsterdam, and I went to play, and I scrubbed out. I didn't scrub out. I mean, I went like 3, 2, and 1 or something. So didn't make day 2. And was wandering around looking for something to do on day 2, and somebody at the Wizards of the Coast booth was like, "Hey, you! Do you know the rules of Magic?" I'm like, "I do," because I'd been running events by that point. I do. Like, would you like to become a judge? I'm like, I don't know. What does a judge do? So we had that whole conversation, and back then, you tested directly into a level based on your score on the test.
Oh, interesting.
So okay. I actually was never a level 1 judge.
Okay. So straight into level 2.
I went right to level 2, and then started working about. Actually, the first event I ever did was right there after I passed the test. They put me in a grand melee. Like one of those 40 players things where, there's a judge for every 5 players, and you rotate when it was crazy stuff. And then I just started doing events for the local Belgian TOs and got involved with the regional and national championships. I actually played a couple of times in the national championships. And then got involved in the European Championships as a judge, and again, rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, how did it work back then when players or Magic players didn't even know what judges were. Like, because nowadays it's people will just know, okay, I have to call a judge for this, and there's sort of this ingrained knowledge, right? But in the early days, like, what did judges have to do? Did you have to proactively go to like games and see what's going on? Like, because I'm sure people didn't know to call judges, right?
Yeah, we were making it up as we went along. Really, we didn't have the staffing levels that we have. You know, there's a metric for how many judges per player you're supposed to have or whatever. Right. You know, back then it was get whatever judges you can, and I think the worst of it was I did a 100 something player PTQ limited event.
Yeah.
By myself. With one admin person. This was and we were scorekeeping on index cards. With players speaking 4 different languages.
No event reporter, manual like collation, and literally one judge in a PTQ.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So you can imagine I was busy. And I'm sure there was tomfoolery. You know, this was the Wild West of Magic. I was going to say, like, how it must be very easy for people that want to do shady things back then to get them done, right? It was. And it was certainly one of the things that led me to want to change the culture of Magic, right? My first pro tour was in Mainz, Germany in 1997. And exposure, like I already knew, I was older than most of my peers, probably by most of the decade. I was in my mid-30s at this point. I didn't put up with nonsense at my local events from players, and you know, I wasn't going to let them get away with any kind of shit.
And you were also more disciplined given your background and all that, right, too. So,
yeah, exactly. And I knew how to make and stand by a decision. I got to the pro tour, and it was a little less well regulated than I expected it to be, and again, it really was. It was a very bad time for Magic, I think. And I like at my first pro tour, I was like, no, I'm gonna do what I can to garner enough influence to fix this. I want to be part of the solution here, because this is I think this could be a great game, but it's not going to be competitively. It's not going to be a great game under these circumstances. And it took a while, but I think we got there. I think we did change the culture.
What do you think were the major things? I know, because obviously I've read third-party accounts, but from your perspective, like, were there like certain turning points that made this thing go in the right direction? I think there were. I think there needed to be a collective political will, and I think it took the real crux point for me was buy-in from the player base. When players like Chris Bakula were like, "No, we are not hanging out with you if you're a cheater," right? We because there were people like, "Yes, my friends all cheat their faces off. I'm not like that, but whatever." I'm like, stop hanging out with them. Like, yeah, but. I'm like, no, yeah, but. And Chris was part of the forefront of the player movement to say, we're not going to do that. And I think it wasn't until we got players and judges on the same page, because I really believe that in the long run, players and judges want the same thing out of an event. They want clean, fair, well organized, well-run events.
The player might have the meta goal of winning, but otherwise, we're all on the same page. So, like, a good event for some players, for judges, is a good event for players. Judges don't want to be good. Judges don't want to be to have an obvious impact in the game. They want to have a passive impact, right?
Right.
They
Similar to refs in a sport, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just like any other sport, they want the clean, organic game to happen. And once we got that marriage of player and judge, and it apparently had never occurred to anybody else to really close the gap between players and judges. Between there were the two separate camps, and I'm like, no, we're all part of the same bigger family. Why don't we? And I just started talking to the players. I really brought them in, and let's do shit together, right? Let's, I want what you want, and let's make it happen together. And you have things that you can do. I have things that I can do, and then as we get to the whole, we'll end up having a better game. And it was kind of a simple thing, but sometimes, it's just the simplest thing that makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely. 80-20 rule, right? Sometimes 20% of the effort yields 80% of the results.
Yeah.
If you're going in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter. So
I will say, being unapologetic about getting the cheaters out of the game was part of it. I didn't need to puff my chest out about it, but I also wasn't going to shy away from it. And I developed at one point this habit of talking to some of the more well-known bad boys on the scene, before, like the night before the event. The night before the event, everybody's in the hall anyway, and they're drafting or playing side events or whatever. So I would go talk to them and let them know that I was there. Hi, so-and-so, good to see you. Nice to have an event. Hope you have a good weekend. I'm here if you need anything.
Yeah.
And
they know what's up. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the message was, I'm here.
Yeah. Kind of like the benevolent enforcer or benevolent policeman. Yeah.
And I think it went along just talking. I talked to the players. How do we I brought players in and talked to them about what are the good cheats right now, because even the clean players know them.
Right.
So what are people doing? What do you see happening at your events that we might not be catching? And it was an invaluable resource to getting most of it out of the game.
Mm-hmm. I've got to ask, what do you think created the cheaters in the first place? Was it just simply the fact that you have competitive events that are that with a prize pool? Is that just something that organically happens with every instance of a game that tries to do that, or is it something else?
I believe it does. I believe there's two things that work there. There's the incentive, which is most of it. I would say the largest percentage are the incentives for prizes, and especially if there's no downside to getting caught, if there's no real enforcement. You get caught cheating in this event, and you can go to the next event and try to cheat again. Right. Then
there's no deterrent. Really.
There's no deterrent. And then there are people that are just pathological.
Yeah.
And they're,
they just don't believe they're doing anything wrong, really. If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough, kind of thing.
Yeah. And there are examples of a couple of extremely good players who might have been highly successful without cheating that show to be big, super cheaty-faced people anyway.
Right.
And that has to be, again, that has to be pathological. That has to be so inherent that they just can't not.
Yeah, and that happens throughout Magic's history, right? I mean, even today you hear about people recently, or maybe like in the last decade, that are like, they could have done it without cheating, but because they did that, it just throws all of the records out the door. It's just like, there's no rational reason to do it really, but then we're kind of looking at it from our point of view instead of their pathological point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So is that also around the time that you kind of learn how to work with wizards, quote unquote, work with wizards? Like kind of understanding how, obviously judging and the DCI is a little bit different, but like, was that sort of the early stages of like learning how to work with this corporate entity? Or
yeah, I mean, being a high level judge was working with wizards, whether it was, just as part of the routine of being a regular Pro Tour judge or Pro Tour head judge, or then, helping the Wizards judge manager administer the judge program, right? There's it was, the program in the early 2000s grew large and quickly, and it was a one-person job at WOTC, and one person wasn't going to be able to do it, and that's kind of where the level 5s and some of the level 4s kind of stepped in and lent a hand and provided both leadership guidance and administrative support to the program. So yeah, I mean, we were insiders pretty early on, although I guess most of a decade later isn't early.
What was it like to work with wizards back then? Like, does it feel very different from, I mean, obviously you're just working with different people, but like, was there something distinct about wizards then, like maybe in the 90s or 2000s that that's unique for that time?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it still had a small company mentality. It was still, Wizards of the Coast, even after it was sold to Hasbro, in the first few years, still felt like a Peter's company. It still felt like it was just a company of other gamers who were doing the thing, and there wasn't any kind of distance. There certainly was never, well, the marketing people want this, or the execs want that, right? That we might hear in the 21st century. It still had very kind of homey, gamers for gamers mentality back then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to explore your judging past with you, because it just feels like, it just feels to me like you've had quite a hand to play in Magic's history, honestly, right? Between like competitive Magic and being part of that in the scene as a level 5 and being obviously a leader of that movement, working with the players, as you said, to then Commander. Like, I'm happy that, you were involved in all that, and hopefully like history will, mark you down as someone who played a hand in like several things, right? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, there have been Commander players who told me that I don't know anything about competitive Magic,
which is fully ironic. Yes, 200%. Like, that's just really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do the things we do, right? We do the things that we think are good and right, and if we carve a legacy for ourselves, then that's what happens. Like I certainly didn't go into judging thinking I'm here's where I'm going to make my mark on the world. Or I certainly didn't take the seed of an idea of commander and plant it and water it and grow it and thinking, this is where I'm going to make my mark on the world. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing I was doing.
You're just doing it. Yeah,
I'm just doing it, right? When I retired the colonel that was emceeing my retirement ceremony was going back over some of my accomplishments in my Air Force career, and I'm like, that sounds a lot more impressive now than it did while I was doing it. While I was doing it, I was just doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing. Right. And I think for the most part, that's what we do, right? We do the thing that is inherent for us. We do the thing that's ours to do. And then what comes out of that, what comes out of that.
Yeah. We just live, right? We move through life and we do things. Yeah.
Yeah, we do things. We do things and hopefully we have a good time, and hopefully we make the world a better place. Like I really do want to leave the world a better place than I found it, and I want to positively interact with people, right? I want people to feel better about themselves after we've interacted than they did before, right?
Yeah.
It is really a blessing to be able to be nice to people, right?
Yeah.
I find myself very lucky. You said you taking Brian to some of the nicer restaurants here. It's like one of my favorite things about my life is that I can spoil my friends. Like, I love that. I'm over the moon about the fact that I can treat people nicely.
And I think this is just me looking back on it. Like, your contributions to magic, they brought joy or happiness to a lot of people in the aggregate.
I hope so.
I know so. So, I mean, you hope so, but I know so. Like, I mean, I think the vast majority is going to agree with that. And Magic's brought a lot of joy, or Commanders brought a lot of joy to people. I think that's super positive. I mean, I'm just thinking about the fact that, like, you don't have to necessarily be a doctor or like saving lives or doing, I don't know, I'm just using an extreme example. I'm not a doctor, but you can figure out how to do things your own way. And it's those experiences, like having a meal with a friend or whatnot, like that's what really matters in the end, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I think one of the philosophies I developed really early on in life was I didn't want to do, I wanted to be. And I thought that being would then lead to doing. I wanted to be a kind, generous, resolute person. I wanted to be the person who other people turn to in times of need, and was a bastion of security for them, or whatever. Who never lost their head. I never want to lose my head in a crisis kind of person. And I think that if you concentrate more on what you are as a human being, it just opens the door to anything that you might do. Then the rest is just second. If somebody says, "Oh, you're ex-military," it's like I don't know if it's part of that's not part of my identity.
Right.
It was a thing that I did, and it was a thing that I was happy to do because I believe it's necessary, and somebody has to do it. And I think that we find ourselves in a better position to do great things if we can be good people.
how did that internalize for you? Like, how did you figure that out for yourself? Because that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're a 20-year-old, like just figuring out they're trying to figure out your direction in life and playing music, right? So
well, I don't think I figured it out at 20. I mean, I think it was something that I came to over the next couple of decades. But it was just eventually realizing that it felt good to be good to people. Maybe there's an endorphin rush or something, I don't know. I think the real answer is why do you do that? And it's because that's the person I want to be. And I think it's okay to have a strong sense of being a person, of being a good human being, and then acting consistently with that. And I think that you can take a lot of the challenges in life and let them not impact you negatively if you keep focusing on that, right? Life is going to hand bad breaks to all of us, and it's how we act when we're at our worst, not when we're at our best. That really shows our character. And I really always wanted to be the person that was still pretty good at his worst. And again, I think that again, just thinking about wanting to be a good human being all the time and trying to act that way. Like I'm not perfect. But I just really I want to treat other people with grace and dignity and kindness. And man, isn't everything possible from there?
It absolutely is. I'm just asking because it's so much easier said than done, at least for me. Like and when I think about even my last 6 months, like it's been a lot of ups and downs, and I'm sure it's been ups and downs for you and a lot of people. And it's not it's not so easy sometimes.
It's not easy at all. And I think one of the other real success factors is not beating yourself up when you fall short.
Right.
Again, we're human beings. We're fallible. We're flawed. We're gonna have bad days. Sometimes we're not gonna operate at the level that we would like to believe that we can always operate at.
Right.
But then it's all right. You know what? I wasn't as good here as I want to be. So what do I learn? What did I learn from it? How do I make it not happen again? And if I need to apologize to somebody, apologize to them. Right? And apologize without equivocating in any fashion.
Right.
I am truly sorry that.
Without some sort of expectation in return.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be a good time to ask you, like, because you've been public with your challenges health-wise, and in light of what we just talked about, like how are you processing everything? Because you seem to me like you're very much an optimist, and you're very much like try to see the good in situations. Maybe I'm overreading, but like how are you processing challenges health-wise? Yeah.
I mean, I've been now almost 6.5 years, with cancer hanging on to me, and I think at some point the road diverges, and you have to either go on or give up, and I don't I don't understand giving up. Like it just. especially in the early days, my wife was like, "Don't you give up on me?" And like, I can't, because I don't understand how that would happen. Like, I don't understand.
That's not who you are, right?
Yeah. And again, I just like, what else? Really, what else is, even the most pessimistically, what else is there to do, right? Am I gonna wallow? Am I gonna just like cry about my misfortunes? Well, that seems like a waste of time, and I don't want to, if my time is going to be shorter than it might have otherwise been, I don't want to waste it crying about the things that weren't. I want to charge forward and do the things that I can. I mean, I'm not currently, as we speak, as far as we know, in any imminent danger. But I think that it's not a great road. But then again, I also believe in medical science. So, I think that you never know what's down there. There's some very exciting things happening in treatment that weren't yet available even when I started. When I was first diagnosed in 2016. So, yeah, I mean, I want to be positive mostly because I don't want to waste my own time, and I also don't want to irritate anybody else. Like, I don't want to. It's bad enough for me. I don't want it to be bad for you too, right? Like, I get that you don't suffer alone, and the people that care about you are also impacted. So, like I don't want to drag any of them down any further. I don't want to be a Pollyanna about it, right? It's not that there's nothing wrong. It's just that we're going to spend our time creatively and positively and do what we can as we can. And again, be that person that we hope that we can be. Be a source of strength. And I really don't see any other way to do it. As I said, maybe that's not true. I do see another way, because there are times, there are times when darkness can come on you, and you think pretty morbid thoughts. But what if, especially when you're in pain or feeling bad, what if this is as good as it gets? And those are the times you really have to count on your support network. And, I happen to be fortunate that I have an amazing partner, a great group of local friends, and, oh, by the way, a worldwide community that's rooting for me, right? So I have I have a million places that I can turn. I have the resources that I need to weather this storm. So I feel like it's just, man, I can't complain about anything, right? I don't. It's not going to, again, worry is wasteful and useless. And this thing, I said it early on, this thing might kill me, but it's never going to beat me. It is never going to defeat me. I'm going to stare it in the face and like, all right, come at me, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I want to live, and sometimes living is doing big splashy things. Sometimes living is just you know, sitting with the cat on your lap and watching Hill Street Blues reruns. It's, you know,
it's just being sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes it really is just being. And, you know, the weird thing is, unlike cancer is so, it's not like other diseases in that most of what's negatively impacted me so far isn't the disease itself, but the treatment.
It's the treatment, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the radiation and the chemotherapy and the immunotherapy and whatnot. Because, you know, I'm not going to lie, radiation and chemo are not a walk in the park. And it's that you understand, like, there are days you can't crawl out of bed. I mean, fortunately for me, that they haven't. That's been a while in the past. You know, the worst, the heaviest of my treatments are more than a year behind me. But you know, there are days that you just gotta, like, you know what, this is all I can do today. You know, if it's all I can do to make it from the bed to the couch, then that's what I'm going to do. And again, you never get down on yourself for it. You just you continue on, and surrendering some control of your life is okay at that point. Like letting the people who care about you take care of you is a thing. And I know there are a lot of people that think that being strong means being stoic. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think actually being strong is having the strength to be as emotional as you think you need to be, but also just let people take care of you.
Right.
You know, I've told people, anybody who cares to listen, about the fact that during both rounds of radiation that I went through, some of my closest friends, Toby, Elliott, and Larabee, stopped their lives and came and took care of me for a while so that my wife could go back to work. Right? Like, Toby was like, I'll do my job. You know, I can do my job remotely. I will just come live with you for a week or two. And I mean, he came down here, drove me to treatments, cooked for me, everything, so that Gretchen can go back to traveling for work. And you have to let people do that kind of thing. And I think that's a I know a lot of people will say that cancer will tell you a lot about yourself. I think it will tell you a lot about other people too. It'll tell you a lot about who your friends are, and everybody in my even remote circles has just stepped up so well and done such an amazing job of being supportive and being there when I need. And I really couldn't ask for any better help getting through what I'm getting through.
Yeah. Are you a spiritual person? Like, do you think about that? I mean, just in terms of, like, I'm curious what your belief systems are with respect to that. I'm not a spiritual
person. I know that I don't know anything. Like, maybe when I slip off this mortal coil, all universal truths will be revealed to me, and if so, great. I think it doesn't matter. I forget which philosopher said, you know, a person can never truly know that they're dead, because if there's nothing in the afterlife, then you're going to know nothing. If there is any of the spiritual afterlives, then you're going to be living the spiritual afterlife and really not know anything about
Right.
this life that we live now. Yeah, I'm committed. I'm committed to this life, and then what happens after is whatever happens. But certainly, I've pondered my own mortality more than once.
I'm sure everyone has on Earth, yeah, but especially given the last like 6.5 years, or I'm sure that's happened for you, right?
Yeah, and again, when your thoughts turn darkest, I think it's you let them happen. Like you don't run away from them, but you don't give in to them either, right? You don't you don't get nihilistic. You just you get through as best as you can.
No,
but I don't know what is on the other side of the door, and to me at this point, it really is a non-factor. I'm gonna do what I can on this side.
Yeah, you're gonna be who you are in this moment.
Yep.
In the moment, really.
In the moment.
Yeah. That's great. And about Toby and Scott, like I know they're your partners in the rules committee, but it sounds like this friendship is like way more than just a work friendship or a relationship. So like, how did that happen? Like, how did you guys develop that bond over time?
Scott and I we worked our first event together. Him as a TO, he was at Wizard already, and me as a judge at Grand Prix Dallas in the year of our Lord 2000. We started, we would see each other at events, and we got friendly, and we just kind of became friends. And then Toby and I became friends through the judge program. And one thing about Toby, Toby was pretty much a level behind me the whole way up. And one of the things I always appreciated about him was when we would be at a pro tour or a big TP or something, and he wanted to hang out with me. He wanted to hang out with me because he wanted to hang out with me, not because he thought that there was something I could do for him. Mm-hmm. There was no sort of
no ulterior motive, really.
Yeah, no ulterior motive, no agenda there. He was just like, hey, let's hang out. We have some similar interests, and so forth and so on. So we were all pretty close already before we invited Toby in 2007, Scott in 2008 to join the Commander RC. Like our friendships were already there. And Scott was a person who infected Wizards of the Coast with Commander, with EDH back then.
Yeah.
And I think one of the successes of Commander as more than a format, right?
As a way of life for Magic.
A way of life.
Yeah.
As in Commander, as an aesthetic. Oscar Wilde would have been a Commander player.
Yes.
Is due to, in part, the perfect storm that happened with the people who were charged with running it. We were all people who had already had success in our lives and were a little older and didn't need to make our bones in any way. So we could literally have our hobby be a thing that we did without needing to monetize it. Because I think like we could have gone in there. Someone in our position could have gone that direction early on, and I think it would have been problematic. But we never needed to.
Yeah.
So where we were in our lives, I think was very important. That we could just dedicate time, like we all had the luxury of time, to dedicate to growing Commander, and it came through, right? We didn't need for it to be anything other than it was, and we were already insiders, right? We were high level judges, or Toby and I level 5 judges. Scott was the Pro Tour manager, or a highly placed and organized play. And Gavin was a Canadian regional coordinator and net rep, and so we, the four of us we were already people on the inside of Magic, as we were growing Commander. We didn't have to come from outside to do it. So we already had access to the people that we needed to talk to, and I like to believe, at least, we had already garnered enough trust and respect from people that that we knew what we were doing when it came to managing the format.
So you mentioned access being one, right? Just being a little bit more developed for you. What about the decision making itself, right? Because you obviously have to make decisions as a team, and were there advantages to being older and wiser at that point already, and not having maybe less of an ego, I might dare say, or yeah. I don't know, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think again, being already skilled at decision making was a positive. Not only were we a little older, we had already advanced to places in our careers where we had the weight of decision making on us, right? We weren't junior people, so that was something we already knew how to do, and I think that the fact that we were close also meant that we could talk to each other when we disagreed. We could talk to each other, if we disagreed. There haven't been too many points over the years where there were real strong disagreements within the RC. There have been a couple of times that one of us was slow to come around to an idea that others were. I was the last convert on mana production. I don't even know if you remember the days when you could only produce the color of mana of your commander's color identity. If you were in Jund and you tried to produce white, it would just come out colorless. And we changed that in 2013 or 14. And they had probably, the other three had probably worked on me for most of half a year or more before I was like, oh, come on, man, it's a really cool part. and the argument was, it never comes up in a game, and I'm like, of course it doesn't come up in a game because it can't. Turns out it doesn't much come up in the game. So so yeah, we were relatively close. We had worked closely together already, and yeah, I like all the elements. I think there was less of an ego involved. That's a pretty salient point there. That we just none of us had anything to prove by then, both either internally or externally, to each other or to the world. So we just operated how we thought best.
Was there a point where you decided to be more involved on the commander side of things as opposed to judging? Was it a clean split, or were you doing kind of both and transitioning one off into the other? I was doing both, but there was
there was a point where it was where I knew that where I felt as though I didn't have much more to give the judge program. I was like, the program was reaching a different stage of maturity, and I think it takes different skill set to conquer than it does to rule, and we were done with the conquest, and it was time to let other people.
It's kind of like wartime versus peacetime CEO kind of deal, right? Situational.
Yeah. And I felt like it was, okay, I'll take time and do other things. And yeah, Commander, this was 2011. Commander was starting to sort of ramp up, and I was like, let me see if I can spend my time doing something else, and retired. But like the minute I retired, WOTC reached out to me. It's like, so do you want to come work on our Pro Tour coverage team? I'm like, okay, sure. And I did that. I did that until I went back to school, and I wasn't aware there was the post 9/11 GI Bill that paid you to go to school, and I was like, huh. How about that? So it just so happened that the University of South Florida was right near where we lived at the time. And I'm like, let me see what they have, and they have an excellent English department. And I was like, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go get an English degree, and I ended up getting two, in fact.
Oh wow! Okay, English literature, or
yep, English literature. I got a bachelor's and a master's, with a specialization in film and Shakespeare.
Ah, okay. But you've been a Shakespeare enthusiast throughout, right? Not just before going to school.
My whole life, yeah. I always said if I went into a PhD program, probably my work would have been writing the definitive book about Shakespeare on film.
Okay.
And, nothing's stopping me from writing that book right now.
That's right. Well, I mean, other than your other commitments, right?
Except this cat on my lap, and the 90 other things that I'm doing at the moment.
What's your favorite work by Shakespeare? Is it possible to list one? It's hard, right? It's like saying what's your favorite album or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of crown jewel of my portfolio was a paper about Henry V, and it's certainly the play that I'm the most familiar with. And watching Branagh's 1989 adaptation of it was certainly part of what really got me interested as an adult in Shakespeare. But yeah, I talk about how not only does Henry kick the French out of his country, he kicks them out of his language in the play. All the famous speeches, he demonstrates that he knows how to speak rhetorically, like the great orators of the day, and then every important speech he gives in the play heavily leans on Germanic language as opposed to Latin-based language. So I'm a huge fan of Henry V, but it only goes so far emotionally. It's relatively cut and dry kind of thing. You're going to pick sides. I mean, it's definitely an anti-war. It's definitely people like Olivier made it into a sort of a
there's different interpretations. Yeah,
interpretation. But I mean, Churchill asked him to. Like Churchill in 1943, like dialed up Olivier. Was like, "Hey, we're having morale trouble. What can you do?" And Olivier is like, "Well, I can turn Henry V into a real flag waver if you want me to," and he did. I think, as written, it's very much an anti-war. It's an anti-war piece, which Branagh did with it when he adapted it. Otherwise, it's really hard to pick because there's a reason we're still talking about Shakespeare 450 years later,
right?
And it's because he understood the human condition, and he understood real human emotion, and if I were to recommend a play to people that they may not be familiar with, it's called Coriolanus, and it's actually about a war hero who comes back and tries to get involved in political life, and things don't necessarily go the way he had hoped they might. And there's a great 2012 or 2013 adaptation with Gerard Butler and holy crap, I'm drawing a blank.
It's okay.
That's set in a modern Gulf War kind of setting.
Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes,
yeah.
Yes.
Excellent, really excellent adaptation of a sometimes problematic play. So yeah, it's hard because there are so many of them. I once wrote a paper on how Portia is the best man in A Merchant of Venice.
Okay.
So I think that's the one that I think that has a lot more emotion into it than some of the others.
Yeah, I've always been more partial to Richard III. I think it's because maybe it's like watching the Al Pacino adaptation at an early age because our English teacher made us watch it in high school, or just I don't know what it was, but like there's something very human about that play for me. And obviously I'm not as well versed as you are. I didn't read all the plays or like like the one you mentioned or watch the adaptation, but for me it's still got to be like Richard III or Hamlet, just as like or Macbeth. I think Macbeth was like our teacher really got us into that one as well, and we had to like reenact the plays in class. So I think that had I think I'm partial to that because I'm still like, for me, I'm still in that time capsule where I'm 16 years old and reading that for the first time. So
have you seen the Ian McKellen Richard III?
I haven't, but I'm sure that's way more definitive, right? So I probably should.
No, it's actually set in a kind of Third Reich-ish.
It's one of those like in a different setting,
near modern settings. Yeah. And he, well, Ian McKellen is great. But you're talking about the Pacino film, Looking for Richard.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, yeah, I got mixed up.
He never finished making that adaptation. Like they never finished making the film of that play.
Right, that's what it was about.
Which is what the movie was all about.
Right.
And why it didn't come together.
That was his white whale, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my memory is like failing me. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so just going back to the working with the others on Commander and on RC. At what point did you kind of wake up one day and realize like Commander hit the inflection point where it suddenly was Like, I'm sure it's not like an overnight thing, but like, was there a particular moment or moments where you're like, wow, this is the big kahuna now?
It wasn't particularly epiphanous, but whatever the predecessor to Scryfall was, I mean, Magic Cards. It used to be called Magic Cards.info. Mm-hmm. And one day I went on there to do a search, and Commander Color Identity was now a selection you could make. Mm. And that was sort of the moment where I knew that we had stepped on the gas.
That was like what, maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe longer? I don't know.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, it was certainly middle of the last decade.
Okay. I mean, so much has happened, but like, this is why I love talking to you, because you have the long view of Magic and Commander. Like, over the past 7-8 years, like, are there particular moments that really stand out to you?
Yeah, Command Fest was the first Command Fest were really something. I was in Seattle already, working at Wizards of the Coast as a designer on Strixhaven. And the first Command Fest came around, and I'm like, well, don't have to travel very far to go. And first day of the first Command Fest, got there early, got in, found a place to sit down, set my stuff up so, people wanted to come in and play, we'd play. And about an hour after the hall opened, I just happened to stand up and stretch my back. Okay. Just get the kinks out. And he stood up, and I looked around the room, and there are 1,000+ people on a Friday morning playing Commander. And I would have never thought that there would have been 1,000 people worldwide playing it at one point. At one point in my life, back in the day. It was there. Yeah, it was just one of those moments. Like, man, look at this. Look at all these people who are here enjoying themselves. And, I gotta admit, it felt pretty good. Mm-hmm. And seeing the rise of people getting the message, right? One of the consistent messages of Commander has been, we're not like other formats. We're the only format that has a philosophy. I've started saying recently, we're the only format that has a conscience. And we were always strident about the message of diversity and inclusivity that we wanted to promote. That we wanted Commander to be something different than tournament Magic. That we wanted to be a change, right? And there have been a lot of times along the way, people are like, well, you need to make Commander like other formats. Like, no, the other formats are already doing what other formats are doing. We need there to be a different thing. We want there to be a different thing. And we knew, I suspected that there were other people that message was going to resonate. The number of people with whom the message resonated were orders of magnitude larger than I ever expected. Like there's a reason Commander became the most popular Magic format ever, and I think the internal message is a significant part of that. I think that you don't need to be the best player. You don't need to be highly competitive. all you need to have is a desire to have a good time with some other people, and that makes you a successful Commander player. And yeah, like I said, way more people put their arms around that than I ever thought. And I'm certainly not sad about it. Right. The fact that we could help make a lot of people very, very happy speaks to me on a very deep level.
Absolutely. And I don't know, so I'm going to ask, have you ever thought about like things like what would keep Commander going for another 50 years, or what would be a series of events that might make that, well, I guess first of all, is that even something that you're concerned about, like long-term longevity of Commander? And if it is, do you think about what are the potential events that could not make that happen? Like, I guess it's a kind of longevity question, really. But is that something that you put any thought behind, or
Absolutely.
As a collective you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. This is certainly something that I've spent a lot of hours thinking about. I think we're at sort of at the legacy point. Like I really want to think about tomorrow, and not necessarily just because that either my tomorrow might be threatened. It's that it's at the point, like it's it's a natural maturity point now. We've conquered the world. Now what do we do?
Right.
And I want us to do the next great thing for Commander that we can do, whatever that is, and provide for its longevity is one of those things, which is the reason, a significant reason that we added 2 people to the Commander Rules Committee last year. Olivia and Jim are a couple of decades younger than I am, and well, I guess are a couple of decades younger than most of us. So they're the they're the kind of great leaders that I think will be able to shepherd the format into its future. Then collectively, we're going to sit with them and discuss what that future might be. Like, what do we want that future to be? I mean, personally, I think that the next thing that the Rules Committee can do is provide value-added service to the community. Like, we don't need to acquire Commander players anymore. Not that we ever actually needed to very much.
Yeah, it's kind of organic, right? Yeah,
right. But at this point, like, momentum is just going to carry us forward with acquisition. Commander for now is the way that people are getting involved in just playing Magic in general. So, how do we now make things better for everybody that is coming on board or that's already on board? So I think that things like helping provide tools for developing the language necessary to navigate games in unfamiliar environments. When you go to Command Fest and you're playing with people that you don't know, how do you have that pre-game conversation? What are some arrows that you can put into your quiver for that? Is the kind of thing that we can help with, and we can certainly continue to be advocates for a certain style of play. Again, this is not tournament play kind of play, and that's a message that needs to keep getting reinforced, because new players come in, many of them come from tournament formats, and want to bring a tournament mentality. Like, well, tournament mentality is fine, but that's over there. We're doing something different over here.
Right.
Again, we're considering the collective experience as opposed to the individual experience.
Right.
And we want to develop some tools to make sure that folks can find the best experience wherever they are. Mm-hmm. And I want to see if there is room for us to do things like subformats. We've had a lot of fun with, most of the fun that I've had in Commander games, some of the best fun I've had in Commander games the past several years have been in power limited environments, have been in playing Boxing League, or we did Innistrad Plane Constructed and had some fun with it, or pre-EDH, which is nothing is legal from the time Commander product was released forward. So New Phyrexia is the latest set that you can build anything from. Which is what I played with. Brian and I played with Cedric from One More Mana and Professor on Shuffle Up and Play, which was a good time. Or just playing the pre-constructed decks together have been a blast. So subformats are a thing that I really want to think about, and then kind of just like what else can we what good work can we do in the community? What can we do to promote new content creators? Like existing content creators have their audiences and they're fine, and and we want to support them and do what we can for them. But I think we also have a responsibility to grow the next generation of content creators. And how do we find them? Well, we go look, right? We have to actively spend time both finding and encouraging them and providing opportunity for them.
Right.
Whether that's having them as guests on our stream, being guests on their streams, whatever it is that we can do to do that. And I think especially for people from traditionally marginalized groups, I think it's a good idea for people in the leadership group to say, no, we want everybody here. So let's talk to folks about how we can get new content creators, and maybe even how folks might develop the skills that they need to possibly step into a commander advisory group role someday, or the spaces are few and far between, but you never know, even into a rules committee role someday. So if we can help people develop skills which have more than just applications for commander, by the way, it's about social skills, and it's about working with groups of people. So any help we can give there, I would be very, very happy to. So moving into just doing more community-based work, I think is something that is in our both near and long-term future.
Yeah. And I think to your credit, you have been doing that, because whenever I read one of your articles on Star City, there's always an invitation to join the conversation in the Discord. Or when I click on your Twitter bio, there's only like 2 links. It's like, here's the RC Discord, or here's the Commander Discord. And so I think you're actually, compared to like the rest of Wizards, I dare say, actually ahead of the pack in terms of like wanting to, even though they seem quite simple in implementation. First of all, there's nothing wrong with simplicity, but secondly, like it's a direct invitation or call to join the conversation, literally. So it's like, I feel like, very much to your credit, you are living those kinds of values, if I may dare say. Like it's a very open invitation, and so like I love the fact that despite these simple solutions, there was clearly, in my mind, like a lot of intentionality and thinking behind that. So,
well, first, thanks for recognizing it, and second, yeah, I mean, there are people that have either been shut out of the conversation or discouraged from the conversation, and we don't want that to happen, right? I really want things to be open, and that's why we spend time. Like, you can actually find us on the Discord server. I know one of the criticisms of years gone by was that the RC was this sort of ivory tower group that never talked to anybody. I think it was incorrect in the first place, because we were traveling to magic events all the time.
Right.
Like after I quit coverage, I certainly, it was a couple of years before I went to another event, but Scott and Toby and Gavin at that point were still out and judging and running events and stuff like that. So they were out and were using it as an opportunity to talk to the Commander player base as much as possible. But now, I mean, we have electronic tools that we can use, and I actively spend time on the Discord server, just there, and come talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, just come talk to me. And if I can do anything to remove roadblocks for anybody to sort of maximizing their Commander experience, I'm going to give it a whirl.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I just want to acknowledge too is, like, having now had interactions with Rebel Sun or Rachel Weeks and various people through this podcast, I can also see that you personally, but also the Commander collective, has been doing a lot to try to raise the voices of these, I would say, like, current or next generation of content people, because, like, you're living that value as well. Like, just the fact that, I was talking to Rachel about you actually before we recorded, and she said that, you gave her first big shot, big break, because you put yourself out there and you endorsed Command Sphere, and now she's very much I would say a big part of the Commander community, not just being in the keg, but just her work, right? Continuous work. And stuff like that.
It's really easy to get behind good people, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, Rachel, I mean, the two that you mentioned, right? Rachel and Rebel are just, like, two amazing people. So advocacy for them is really easy.
Kind of a slam dunk. Yeah.
I mean, it really is a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk on the 9-foot rim.
Yes.
Because, I mean, Rachel was crushing it when they started Command Sphere, like the first couple episodes, and I actually have to thank Jim for turning me on.
This is Jim LePage? Yeah.
Jim LePage, yeah, okay. For turning me on to Dan and Rachel and Command Sphere, and I'm like, oh my! Like, the first episode, I was like, oh, these two are great, and then I started listening to episodes and just started talking to both of them, and Rachel is just amazeballs, and I absolutely think the world of her, and she is crushing it now on Command Zone podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm halfway through the recent episode right now, and I'm like,
I just met Rachel in LA a few weeks ago. I was there. I actually visited the Command Zone house with Josh and Jimmy, because I interviewed Josh on here, and he's like, hey, come and meet me in real life. And Rachel was there as well, and it was a good time. Yeah. So she seems really happy in her role, if I may say. So, yeah.
Yeah. she she had mentioned that to me when they were in the early stages, and I'm like, go for it. Like just go. You're gonna be amazing. She's got she has this great facility with people. You're very comfortable in front of the camera, obviously, but like we spent last year in Indianapolis, as a matter of fact, at was it Command Fest? Anyway, there was an event, and like the two of us just hung the whole weekend, and there was one like really kind of touching moment where it was clear if you were paying attention that I was struggling a little bit, and she took the time to walk me back to my hotel room, like we were at an attached to the convention center hotel, and she took the time to leave the hall and make sure that I got back okay to my room to rest a little bit. And yeah, we just had breakfast and all the time and talked Commander and then hung out and met the people and everything. And yeah, she's just super. And then I had chance to hang out with Rebell at SCG Con New Jersey, because she drove across the river and actually went to dinner with me and Brian at one of his favorite spots near his house.
Oh, nice.
And just had another good weekend. And Rebell is just another person that I can't say enough good things about, because we're talking about a first-rate brain. Like, we are talking about a distinct and unique magic mind right there.
Yeah. Very, very distinct, very innovative, I dare say. Like, really pushing the envelope of what magic can be. Not just Commander, but I had a really good conversation with her, like, for this podcast, and it was just incredible. Like, it's like when you have people from all these different backgrounds and then marry them with magic, it's just something super wonderful. Like, it's just not some, like, I hate to refer to Rebell as like an entity, but like Rebell could not have existed like 30 years ago in Magic. Like, when I started playing in Revise, like, my mind would have been blown at the stuff that like Rebell's doing today. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that 10 years ago.
Yeah. Actually,
that we might not have been ready for Rebell.
That's right.
But what's important is that we are today.
What's important is that we're all here now, and we're so much better for having these voices.
And we're so much better. We're so much better for having these diverse voices and these distinct personalities in our community, and our collective is like the collective strength of our community is not to be undervalued, and like I just think we just can continue to do good things with and for good people, and we've been given the opportunity because of the game.
Absolutely.
But Commander has always been a social format first and a mechanical one second. And I know that there are people who see it as a mechanical one first and believe it, and I want to support them in that the way we're going to manage the format, it's always going to be social first, right? I'm not going to tell anybody they're having fun wrong. We're simply gonna hang ourselves out on the edge of being socially and morally responsible in everything we do, and that's what I want our takeaway to be, right? That we did something other than play the card game.
Sheldon, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I think it was...
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely wonderful.
2 hours already.
I know. It just flew by. And I'm so glad we went into the areas that we did, because, I want to have that conversation with you about the things that you're not being asked about like 100 million times. And I think we did have that conversation, so I'm very happy about it.
We absolutely did. And it's fun and refreshing to do it, right? Like, I'm happy to do any interview, but I don't like giving the same answer that I've given before, right? I really do appreciate your willingness to ask the question that others have left on the cutting room floor.
Thank you so much for just being an open book, or open deck list, maybe, depending on the metaphor. Yeah, I wish you all the best, my friend, and I hope you have
Thanks.
a great rest of the evening. Yeah.
You do the same. I will talk to you very, very soon.